Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It is Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021. I'm Andrew Hansen alongside Omaha, Joe Stanton, ready for week 9 Thursday night football. And Joe, it feels like I haven't seen you forever. We have a lot to catch up on. We've been traveling in different directions, but I want to thank you personally for holding down the fort with Crash when I was gone for my little bye week. And you put out a series of winners on FanDuel. So thank you for crushing it while I was gone.
Absolutely. It feels like we've just been dodging each other.
Yeah.
It's great to jump on the pod again with you. But yeah, while you were out, Crash and I did a Monday Night Football game between the 49ers and the Colts, and we had some winners there. We had some winners from the Sunday hybrid that we put out there with some big games from some of our key plays. So yeah, I held it down. I definitely mentioned on the pod that you reviewed my notes.
Yes, I
So
heard that.
so they all knew we had some approval coming from you. But yeah, very happy to be back here talking about this one with you.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We've got Jets and Colts. Before we really get into this, the other thing we do have to mention, of course, all of our listeners know that you are the Denver man, and the unfortunate news: Mr. Miller's been traded, and I'm
Yeah.
almost surprised that you haven't closed those shades behind you and just gone completely dark with the sad news of Von Miller's trade.
Yeah, actually, I live in the similar area where Vaughn's at. So I mean, I've seen his truck a couple of times, but it
I
is
mean,
it's
you were probably at the Halloween party, right?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's sad to see him go. I think there's one player left. Well, I know there's one player left from our Super Bowl 50 team, and that's our kicker, Brandon McManus. So quite the shift in Denver. I think it's going to be sad, lifetime Broncos, but he left in good terms. It'll be all right. He's always going to be a Bronco, but sad to see him go.
Yep, yep. All right, well, I'm excited that we have a football game to talk about, and
Absolutely.
I don't even care that it's the Jets and the Colts, which doesn't sound too exciting, but as you can see from our thumbnail, we've got a new star in town, and Mike White.
Yep.
So we'll get to him here in a minute, but how about the Jets being 10.5-point underdogs over under 46? Where's the respect for this 2-5 team that just took out the
Right.
Bengals? And they've got this star, Mike White. My money's on the Jets here, covering plus 10.5.
I,
What do you think, Joe?
I think they cover the spread as well. But you're right. Where's the respect? The Jets just found their franchise QB. What's
Come
going
on,
on? Um,
405 yards passing.
yeah. Oh, that's
Just
that's the story to follow. The question was when Mike White stepped in was like, can he do it versus Cincinnati? And now the question is, can he do it again?
can
And
anybody stop him? Really, that's the question.
right, right. I mean,
So
Andrew, the Colts are 1-3 at home, and their one win is coming from the Houston Texans. So it's not like the Colts are this great home field advantage. I think the Jets can cover as well. That's too big of a spread to give to Mike White.
no doubt about it. And I guess that is the one question. You know, the Jets, both of their wins have been at home. So can they take this show on the road? We will see. But the you know the matchup through the air is really where you want to look against the Colts. They've given up the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, sixth
Yep.
most fantasy points to wide receivers, and running backs third fewest. You know they've played Tennessee twice. Derrick Henry, with all those carries against them, no touchdowns in 2 games. I think that says all you need to say about the Indianapolis run defense. You know, on paper, it's a 33% run advantage on
Mhm.
Pro Football Focus. So we'll get a little bit more into that here in a minute. But I want to talk about this passing attack. I watched the tape with Jets and Bengals, and what the game plan was just short passes all over the place. Mike White
Yep.
getting it out as quickly as he could, all kinds of passes to the running backs and the slot receiver types in Jamison Crowder and Elijah Moore. I mean, Michael Carter, 9 receptions as a running back for 95 yards. His buddy Ty Johnson, 5 for 71 with that awesome touchdown run on the reception, tiptoeing along the sidelines. And so the game plan worked. If you just look at the stat line and you see the 2 interceptions, you think, oh, well, he's got that downside. But those picks were both deflections, so they weren't on Mike White. So he really had an excellent game. And I don't see any reason why they don't, use a similar approach where they're getting it out quickly and, when you don't throw it down the field, you really reduce the risk of turnovers. And I don't think he really threw one down the field until the very end of the game. He took one deep shot with Elijah Moore. But I want to start my build here with White, Crowder. He's 7,800 on DraftKings, and then possibly Elijah Moore too at 62, because we've got Corey Davis doubtful. We're recording this on Wednesday night. Tevin Coleman out, Zach Wilson out, of course. But what do you think about this trio here on DraftKings with PPR getting some exposure to that group?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mike White completed 82% of his passes last week, and that's not him just like holding on to the ball. I mean, it was a very conservative game plan. Mike LaFleur gave a very conservative game plan, and I don't see him changing that up, especially on a short week and just with how they match up against the Colts. I assume a similar completion percentage just because it's not these long throws. And if you look at the game tape like you did, Andrew, Mike White was decisive with the ball. It wasn't like he had deep down the field receivers that he just missed throwing to, so he dumped it off. No, he was decisive. He made quick decisions, and he looked really good back there. So I don't think there's any reason why they can't do it again here against the Colts. The Colts are ranked 27th in yards allowed per play. And actually, the Colts have allowed the most offense to the short right. About 35% of the pass plays run against them is short and to the right and short and to the left. And of course, most offenses will be having short passes compared to deep passes against any defense, but it's a little bit of an anomaly compared to some of these other teams. So the Colts get beat down in the short pass game. And like you said, I like Crowder. I like Elijah Moore. Crowder averaged about 9.33 yards per target last game. Elijah Moore's had 12 targets over the last 2 weeks. So he's stepping into the office. Both of those receivers have definitely stepped up with Corey Davis being out. We talked a little bit before the pod, but we don't see Corey Davis getting in there this game. So yeah, I love Mike White pairing him up with Crowder and Elijah Moore. Andrew, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, hearing short right, short left, that's ding, ding, ding to the Jets' ears. So the only downside here is that in that game, he did complete passes to 10 different receivers.
Right.
They kind of gave all the guys at the end of the bench a little bit of run. Keelan Cole had 3 catches. Denzel Mims a couple. Berrios had 2, including a touchdown. Jeff Smith, and then the tight ends. So they had 6 receivers with catches, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. The tight ends were not targeted heavily. Ryan Griffin, Tyler Kroft, they have not been targeted heavily all season. So that's not the place I'm looking. But I do like also how you mentioned Moore, the 12 targets recently. He's really stepping up. So that's my main focus. We do need to talk about these running backs, though. Carter looked awesome, quick, all over the field. Some of those receptions he had, he lined up out wide. So they just wanted to get the ball into his hands. But Ty Johnson is there as well. He had 9 touches. I'm not as high on them, because of the tough run defense. But I'm kind of torn on DraftKings because of PPR. How many catches will they get this week? Can Carter back it up after 24 touches with another big game? What do you think?
Yeah, I like Carter here. He is going up against Buckner on the other side, who's been doing great things for the Colts defense. He's had 4 sacks and 8 QB hits. So I like Carter for the fact that he got 14 targets thrown his way in the air last game. I mean, he had between attempts 29 overall in that last game. So he had the most ball he had the most opportunities to have the ball in his hand, and they made it a point to do so. So I think you are going to have to run a little bit, like obviously just can't throw every play. And I think Carter's going to be involved on the throw and in the run. And you're right, the Colts have a good run defense. I don't mind Carter here. He did look really strong, but from a cost savings perspective, I do think I like Ty Johnson better for the receiving upside. I mean, 5 catches out of the backfield, 71 yards and a touchdown. I like Ty Johnson, and that's just comparable to I think they're going to have similar volume in the air. I kind of do expect Carter to have a little bit more, but when you're constructing your lineup, obviously Ty Johnson is cheaper on your list. I think both are good GPP plays. Maybe Carter in some cash builds, but I like Ty Johnson from a cost saving perspective when you're building your lineup.
Yeah, and the other thing here is game script, game flow. If Vegas is somehow right and Indianapolis can slow down this unbelievable vaunted Jets passing attack with this new regime, then if the Jets are playing from behind, then they should be throwing it a bunch again.
Sure. Yeah.
So those guys will continue to get targeted. So,
Yep.
all right. Before we turn to Indianapolis, just want to chat about our lineups here that we give out, that we've been talking about here. If you're new to the show, we give out full lineups on FanDuel and Yahoo for all these slates in every sport. So in football, these showdown games, cash lineups, and GPP. On DraftKings, we give out the core lineup for the cash approach GPP. So we'll do that again tonight for the Thursday night game tomorrow.
Yep.
And if you want to jump in, dfscoachtalk.com, and then we'll get you an email into our Discord. So jump in Thursday, during the day, and that way you can get the NFL and NBA lineups that will be coming tomorrow night. Did I cover that correctly, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see some of those membership options scrolling at the bottom for a couple 3-day passes and 5-day passes. They'll get you the whole NFL week just to try us out, and then join us for the long term. And I know a lot of folks have done that recently. So yeah,
stick with us through the weekend for all that extra fun, and then go long term. No doubt about it.
Right.
All right, Joe, talk to me about this Indianapolis Colts side here as the big home favorites.
Absolutely. Andrew, I'll mention one thing right before I jump in. The Colts are first in the league for takeaways with 18. And that, I think, plays into the conservative game plan for the Jets because they're not going to want to take as many chances. It's just the cherry on top. It's just the cherry on top that
I like it.
Add on there. So, yeah, for the Colts, we'll kick it off with Carson Wentz at the helm. A little drama going on in Indianapolis. So the Colts got Wentz for a 2nd and 3rd round pick from the Eagles. And if Wentz plays over 75% of the offensive snaps, the 2nd round pick becomes a 1st round pick. So the Colts have been in the media saying, ooh, what do we do? Are we making a run? Do we throw in our backup? And obviously Wentz is a professional, but very odd dynamics going in Indianapolis, where it's kind of like, do we trust Wentz enough? Are we going to just bosh the season? It's interesting. And Wentz started off the year not great. He did have a couple good games there versus Houston and Baltimore. But in this last game, he went 27 for 57 against Tennessee for 231 yards and 3 touchdowns, but 2 really bad interceptions. I mean, there was one, he's backing up in the end zone, no shot, and he shuffle passes it off basically right to the defender. In my opinion, he holds on to the ball just a little too long, and the Jets have the 3rd most pressure against QBs. So Wentz for me is almost a fade. It's hard to fade a QB in a single game match like this because they have the highest floor in that ceiling. But it's because I like these kind of plays on the outside, like a Jonathan Taylor or like flying a Pittman solo. Carson Wentz for me, I'm just not too high on him. I just don't think he gets it done here versus the Jets. I think a lot of the usage goes to Jonathan Taylor. So yeah, that's where I'm at with the QB. Before I jump into the other guys, Andrew, what's your thought with Wentz?
I'm with you. The 400-yard passing games, and in these shootouts with Baltimore are the aberration for me. It's all the other games with the multiple turnovers,
right?
Less than 50% completion percentage that you just referenced. So I would rather go with Mike White here, no doubt.
Yep. Same boat. Of course, for the Indianapolis wide receivers, you have Michael Pittman, who's having a great year. Definitely a step up from last year. He has a 25% target share. He's lining up evenly over the field, left to right, and in the snap. And these last 2 weeks, he's had some good games. He's had 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. He actually had 15 targets against Tennessee. I mean, granted, the Colts threw 57 times in that game, but he's the preferred option in this backfield. In perspective, he had 4 targets against San Francisco. Now, that was a weather game.
Right.
Ball's really slippery. I would normally project more around 8 to 9 targets for Michael Pittman, which is still good on this offense. But in this game, he actually just averages out about an average wide receiver to cornerback grade on PFF. And actually, where he'll be lining up the most versus Bryce Hall is the worst matchup, and that's on the left. It's below average. And he has a good matchup on the right, but nothing's jumping off the page for Pittman for me here, especially with me not really liking Wentz. I think you can fly Pittman solo if you're going to want to get on the Colts side of the ball in your lineups. With that being said, it's a fringe play. Pascal's pretty much in the same boat. He's had 0 touchdowns over the last 5 games. He did have 5 targets against Tennessee for 43 yards. He's kind of a boom play for me. So he averages about 3 to 5 receptions, and then he'll have 1 big reception. That's a chunk of 80% of his plays. So I like Pascal as a GPP, cost saving. He could really explode for a big play. But that's how I'm looking at the pass catchers for Indianapolis.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar. You could go with one of those guys. The Jets, surprisingly, have given up the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. That's because they've been so busy giving up fantasy points to the running backs. So,
right.
It's not a great matchup on paper. Pascal, very inconsistent. Pittman, more of a savings on FanDuel if you go that route. If you opt for him over Wentz, I think it makes a little more sense on FanDuel because of the price savings. And then with T.Y. Hilton out, Campbell still out,
Yep.
I'm thinking the third receiver will probably be Ashton Doolin, who is $200 on DraftKings. So if you want to get him into your lineup, then you can get pretty excited about your other 5 guys.
Yeah, you never know with one of those plays, especially in like a Millie Maker or Match GPP. You also have Mo Alley Cox and Doyle as your tight ends. They've had the same red zone targets. They're basically splitting the amount of time that they're on the field. Mo Alley Cox was on the field for 39 of the 80 offensive snaps. Doyle for the other. It's almost like a Broncos running back between Gordon and Javonte Williams. Stupid of me to bring in a Broncos metaphor, but here we are. They're very even for me. I think from my eyes and me watching the game, they draw up more plays from Mo Alley Cox where he's the first target they're looking at, where Doyle is kind of that second or third option. So for that reason, I do like Mo Alley Cox. Also, Doyle was the one who came away with his first touchdown and the touchdown among the tight ends last game. So I think people might just be more generally on Doyle this game. So if you're going to go at tight end, I think you go Mo Alley Cox. Before last game, he had 4 touchdowns over those last 4 games. So I like Mo Alley Cox in the red zone. But on to my favorite play of the Colts, Jonathan Taylor. He is the #1 projected running back over the entire week, not just in this game, over the entire week on PFF. In the last 4 weeks, he's finished as in the top 6 running backs. He was running back 2, running back 3. Things are really clicking. He leads those top 10 running backs in yards per carry with about 5.36 yards. The Jets are allowing 3.99 yards per carry, which is below average. It's not the worst, but it's below average. And get this, Jonathan Taylor leads the entire league in red zone attempts with 38. Now, he passed Derrick Henry because obviously Henry was holding that for a while. And he actually also has the most inside the 5-yard carries with 15. So Jonathan Taylor's really getting involved in this offense, and he's the preferred option in the red zone and when you're within the 5. With the way to attack the Jets defense, Andrew, like you mentioned on the run, I really like Jonathan Taylor. He's really been clicking in these last couple of games, and he's been breaking away from tackles. He's all over the field. He's involved in both the passing game and obviously the rushing game. So, yeah, I really like Jonathan Taylor in this one.
You make a lot of sense. Great matchup on paper. They love to run it. He's excellent at running it. My only hesitation here is 2 things. It's Thursday night. He just had 16 carries on Sunday. Nyheim Hines only had 1. Marlon Mack didn't have any. And his price, he's ultra expensive on both sites.
Sure.
So that's what I'm going to be grappling with here for the next 24 hours is what to do about that situation. I think you can play Taylor and Hines together. I I think you can go with just Hines, especially in a GPP. So that's the quandary that we're in here is do things change because it's Thursday night and he got almost all the carries on Sunday? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you make a good point because the Colts have done that in the past where on a short week they might favor the other running back. And that's what they were doing in past seasons. I'll combat you a little bit. I think the Colts are a little different this year, and they're giving a lot of those offensive snaps to Jonathan Taylor. And that's the projection he's on. That's why he's top of the leaderboards in attempts and carries. So I think overall he's fifth in the NFL in carries so far. So I don't mind Hines in the GPP. He played 20 of the 80 offensive snaps last week. So he only got one carry, but he was on there for, what is that, a fourth of the snaps. So in a short week, I do think we could see more of a Hines. So I like him as a GPP. I think overall, of course, I like Taylor. I think Hines is very sneaky, and I don't mind that at all. I actually think a lot of people might be off of the running game a little bit, just because they saw what Joe Mixon produced last week against the Jets. Mixon had 14 carries for 33 yards, but Mixon hasn't eclipsed an 100-yard running game since week 1. I mean, and he's been playing defenses like Chicago, Jacksonville, Detroit. So I actually don't think it's much of a fact to say that Mixon didn't produce very highly. Now he didn't produce well. It's still 33 yards, but I think the way to attack the Jets here is the running game. And I like Jonathan Taylor a lot, obviously, but Andrew, you make a great point about Hines.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at Mixon's fantasy points, you think, oh, another great run, performance against this defense. But it was 2 touchdowns, and per touch, he was not effective.
Right.
But I do prefer the Indy running attack here to Cincy, so I think Taylor would be in a better spot if he gets all those touches. And I agree, he's a lot more secure than last year with his touches, where he was more inconsistent. So the trend is great. He's obviously the number one guy. But we'll just have to see if they run him out there for the same amount. And 16 is not a lot of carries. It's not like he just had 30 carries,
right?
Like Derrick Henry.
He's averaging 15 carries a game, so it's not like he was overworked in the Sunday game. You can make the argument for Wentz that he was overworked with 57 throws downfield.
He was overworked, yeah.
right. So it's not like he was overworked on Sunday, but absolutely.
All right, great. Well, looking forward to finalizing these lineups here. Joe, any final thoughts about the game or DFS coach talk?
Well, we're not going to talk about the kickers?
Oh, well, we could. Do you have a thought? Do you have a preference? I have mine.
You go first. I don't know if I'll play a kicker here, but I'm curious what you say.
Yeah, I'm looking at Amendola just by a hair for the Jets. 8 for 11, a little bit more secure. Badgley, 3 of 4 on the season here, filling in. 42 is his long. Amendola did kind of hook a long attempt last week, 54, missed it pretty badly, but that's where I would lean.
Yeah, I would lean Amendola as well, just the way the Jets are moving it down the field. They're going to be moving it at a slow pace. You give the Colts more opportunities to get a stop. They stop them deep. Of course, I don't think either kicker on either side is one of the top kickers or very accurate.
Right.
But yeah, I think I'm in the same boat there. So good to know.
One of these.
Good to know we're in line on the kickers.
Yeah,
as we always are.
Well, I mean, if these guys can't hit one over 50 yards, they're not really worth talking about too much.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, that does it for the Week 9 Thursday preview. Check out the Main Slate podcast this weekend as well as our primetime show. Check out the NBA pod for tomorrow. Check out golf tonight if you want to. Yep. Still time to get lineups in there. So that's it for tonight. Excellent work, Omaha Joe. On behalf of the entire DFS Coach Talk team, I'm Andrew Hansen. We'll see you next time as we look to crush it in DFS.